Tonight, a nation is on edge. A father, a protector, is now a hunted man. Travis Caleb Decker, a 32-year-old U.S. Army veteran, is wanted for the unthinkable. He is accused of murdering his own 3 little girls, 9-year-old Paityn, 8-year-old Evelyn, and sweet little 5-year-old Olivia. 3 beautiful sisters, their bright futures stolen in the most horrific way imaginable. A family has been shattered, a mother's heart ripped to shreds, and a community is left reeling, asking one question over and over again: why? How could a father do this to his own flesh and blood? It's a betrayal of the highest order, a crime that shakes us to our very core. The story unfolds in Wenatchee, Washington, a place that should have been a safe haven. It was the start of the summer holidays. The sun was shining, school was out, and these 3 girls were looking forward to a camping trip with their dad. For them, it was just another weekend visit, part of a routine custody arrangement. They trusted him. They loved him. There was no reason for them to suspect that this trip would be their last. This idyllic summer scene, filled with the promise of laughter and adventure, became the backdrop for a premeditated act of pure evil. The normalcy of it all is what makes the subsequent horror so utterly gut-wrenching and impossible to comprehend. The loss of these 3 little angels has sent shockwaves far beyond Washington state. It's a story that has captured the attention of the world, a stark reminder of the darkness that can hide behind a seemingly normal facade. We see their smiling faces in photos, their innocent eyes looking out at us, and we feel a collective sense of grief and outrage. This wasn't a random act of violence, this was a calculated betrayal by the one person who should have protected them from all harm. Their names, Paityn, Evelyn, and Olivia, must never be forgotten. They are not just victims, they are 3 precious lives that were extinguished far too soon. Tonight, we search for answers. We demand justice. A massive manhunt is underway for Travis Decker, a man now considered armed and extremely dangerous. He has vanished, leaving behind a trail of devastation and 1,000 unanswered questions. Is he hiding? Is he on the run? Has he taken his own life? The uncertainty only adds to the agony for the girl's grieving mother, Whitney, and for a public desperate for closure. We will not rest until this monster is found. We will keep shouting the names of his victims from the rooftops until justice is served. Make no mistake, Travis Decker, we will find you. The timeline of this tragedy is a cold hard roadmap of a father's descent into pure evil. On Friday, May 30th, 2025, Travis Decker picked up his daughters for what was meant to be a standard weekend visit. For their mother, Whitney, it was a routine handover, a moment she had been through countless times before. But this time was different. A knot of unease began to form when the hours ticked by with no word. The girls were scheduled to be returned on Saturday, May 31st. When that deadline came and went, with calls and texts going unanswered, Whitney's unease turned into full-blown panic. A mother's intuition is a powerful thing, and hers was screaming that something was terribly, terribly wrong. That Saturday, with her daughters still missing and no contact from their father, Whitney did what any terrified parent would do. She called the police. The Wenatchee Police Department acted quickly, issuing an endangered missing persons alert. The faces of Paityn, Evelyn, and Olivia flashed across news channels and social media feeds. A community held its breath, praying for their safe return. Hope was a fragile thing, but it was all anyone had. People imagined the girls were simply lost on a hiking trail, their father's phone out of battery. No one wanted to believe the alternative, the dark possibility that was lurking just beneath the surface of this family camping trip. The search intensified, but the silence from Decker was deafening. Investigators later uncovered a chilling digital trail. Just days before he picked up the girls, on May 26th, Decker had been searching online for information on how to relocate to Canada. He wasn't just planning a camping trip, he was planning an escape. This was not a spontaneous act of rage. This was a cold, calculated plot. He knew exactly what he was going to do. He looked his daughters in the eyes, told them they were going camping, all while secretly planning to end their lives and flee the country like a coward. The premeditation is what makes this crime so utterly monstrous. The agonizing wait came to a devastating end on Monday, June 2nd. The missing persons alert was abruptly canceled, replaced by the news every parent dreads. The bodies of the 3 little girls had been discovered. They were found at the Rock Island campground near Leavenworth, a scenic spot in the Cascade Mountains now forever stained by this unspeakable act. The hope that had flickered across the state was extinguished in an instant, replaced by a wave of profound sorrow and white-hot anger. The nightmare was real. The girls were gone, and their father, The man responsible for this atrocity had vanished without a trace. When law enforcement arrived at the Rock Island campground, they were met with an eerie and disturbing scene. The campsite was abandoned, a silent testament to the horror that had taken place. Decker's pickup truck was still there, a key piece of evidence in a now homicide investigation. Inside the truck, investigators found a chilling collection of everyday items: a blanket, Decker's wallet, some food, and the girls' car seats, still in place. But it was what was found on the outside of the vehicle that sent a shiver down the spine of even the most seasoned detectives. 2 bloody handprints, a clear and damning sign of the violence that had occurred. The heart of the crime scene was the tent. Inside, the 3 little sisters were found tucked into their sleeping bags. There were no signs of a struggle, no indication that they had fought for their lives. This haunting detail suggests they were likely attacked while they slept, defenseless and completely unaware of the danger posed by their own father. The preliminary cause of death was determined to be asphyxiation. He had suffocated his own children one by one in the dead of night. The very sleeping bags that should have kept them warm and safe were used in their final moments. It is a level of cruelty that is almost impossible to process. Every detail uncovered by forensics painted a more complete and terrifying picture of Decker's cold-blooded plan. Investigators learned that he had visited the same campground the day before the murders, a chilling reconnaissance mission to scout the location for his heinous crime. He knew the layout, he knew the routine, and he chose a spot where he believed he could act without being seen. The evidence left behind was both sparse and telling. He had taken care to cover his tracks, but he was not perfect. The bloody handprints, the abandoned truck, the digital searches, it all pointed directly to him as the sole perpetrator. The absence of a struggle is perhaps the most gut-wrenching aspect of this entire case. Paityn, Evelyn, and Olivia went to sleep that night believing they were safe, tucked in by the father they trusted. They would have had no idea that the man who was supposed to be their guardian was, in fact, their executioner. He waited until they were at their most vulnerable, in the quiet darkness of a remote campground, to carry out his monstrous plan. The silence of the crime scene speaks volumes. It tells a story of absolute betrayal, of innocence lost, and unrecognizable. So, who is Travis Decker? How does a man go from being a father and a soldier to a wanted triple murderer? On the surface, his profile is one we've seen before. He is a 32-year-old U.S. Army veteran, a man who served his country. But beneath that veneer of service lay a deeply troubled individual. Friends and family have spoken of his struggles with post-traumatic stress disorder, or PTSD, following his military deployment. This is not an excuse, never an excuse. But it is a piece of the puzzle. The horrors of war can leave deep, invisible scars, and it seems Decker's scars were festering long before he committed this ultimate act of violence. His personal life was in turmoil. He and the girl's mother, Whitney, were embroiled in a difficult and contentious custody battle. While he had visitation rights, the arrangement was fraught with tension. Whitney had reportedly raised concerns about his mental state and his increasingly erratic behavior. Decker had also started living a more isolated life, showing an interest in off-grid survivalism. He possessed extensive knowledge of the wilderness, skills that would have been honed in the military and that now make him an incredibly difficult fugitive to track. He knew how to disappear, and it appears that was his plan all along. The warning signs were there, simmering below the surface. A man struggling with his mental health, isolated from his community and locked in a bitter custody dispute. These are red flags, folks. Red flags that the system seemingly failed to see, or worse, ignored. How was a man with these documented issues allowed to have unsupervised visitation with his children? It's a question that haunts this case and points to a catastrophic failure. The very legal framework designed to protect children may have inadvertently placed Paityn, Evelyn, and Olivia directly in harm's way, delivering them into the hands of their killer. As a fugitive, Travis Decker is a formidable threat. He is not just some common criminal, he is a trained soldier with survivalist skills. Law enforcement believes he is hiding out in the vast and rugged Cascade Mountains, an environment he knows well. He is considered armed and dangerous, and the public has been warned not to approach him under any circumstances. The U.S. Marshals have joined the hunt, deploying hundreds of personnel to search the dense forests, abandoned cabins, and remote structures dotting the landscape. But tracking one man in such a vast wilderness is like finding a needle in a haystack. He could be anywhere. When a tragedy of this magnitude occurs, we must look beyond the monster who committed the act and ask the hard questions. How did the system fail these three little girls so completely? Travis Decker was a man with known mental health issues, a veteran suffering from PTSD, and a party in a contentious custody case. Whitney Decker, their mother, had voiced her fears. She had seen the warning signs. Yet, the legal system granted him unsupervised visitation. The courts, the very institution meant to be the ultimate protector of children, signed off on the arrangement that led directly to their deaths. This is not just a tragedy, it's a systemic breakdown. We have to ask, what went wrong? Did the family court have all the information about Decker's mental state? Were his PTSD and erratic behaviors properly evaluated and taken into consideration when determining custody and visitation rights? Or was this a case of a father's rights being prioritized over the safety and well-being of his children? Too often we hear stories of mothers raising alarms that go unheard, their concerns dismissed as the complaints of a bitter ex-partner. We must create a system where credible warnings are taken seriously, where a parent's documented mental instability is a screaming red flag that cannot be ignored. The failure extends beyond the courtroom. It speaks to a broader societal issue regarding mental health, particularly among our veterans. These men and women serve our country, and when they return, we have a sacred duty to provide them with the support they need to heal from the invisible wounds of war. Was Travis Decker offered adequate mental health care? Did he have access to the resources that could have helped him manage his PTSD before it spiraled into violence? While he alone is responsible for his horrific actions, we must examine whether we, as a society, are doing enough to prevent such breakdowns from happening in the first place. This case must become a catalyst for change. Whitney Decker, in the midst of her unimaginable grief, has already begun to fight for legal reform. She is channeling her pain into a powerful call for what could be called Paityn's Law or Olivia's Law. Legislation that would require more stringent psychological evaluations in custody cases where there are documented concerns about a parent's mental health. No other family should have to endure this kind of pain. The deaths of Paityn, Evelyn, and Olivia must not be in vain. Their legacy must be a stronger, more protective system that truly puts the safety of children first, no matter what. Right now, as we speak, one of the largest manhunts in Washington state history is underway. The central question on everyone's mind is simple. Where is Travis Decker? Is he alive, hiding out in the rugged wilderness of the Cascade Mountains, using his military training to evade capture, or is he dead, having taken his own life in a final, cowardly act after murdering his daughters? Law enforcement is operating on the assumption that he is alive and on the run. Hundreds of officers from the Chelan County Sheriff's Office and the U.S. Marshals Service are combing through dense forests and checking remote cabins, a painstaking and dangerous task. There are several theories about his motives and his ultimate plan. The first, and perhaps most chilling, is that this was an act of ultimate revenge against his ex-partner Whitney. In the twisted logic of a killer, by murdering their children, he believed he could inflict the maximum possible pain on their mother. His online searches about moving to Canada suggest he planned to escape and start a new life after committing the murders. Another theory is that this was a planned murder-suicide and that his body simply hasn't been found yet in the vast and unforgiving terrain. Either way, the motive is rooted in pure selfishness and evil. The public has become a crucial part of this investigation. Police have released recent images of Decker, highlighting his distinctive tattoos and the clothes he was last seen wearing, a tan or green t-shirt and dark shorts. They have begged residents to check their doorbell cameras, their sheds, and their properties for any sign of him. A $20,000 reward has been offered for any information that leads to his arrest. The message from law enforcement is clear: he is out there, and someone, somewhere, knows something. Every tip is being followed, every lead investigated, the pressure is mounting, and the net is closing in. Tonight, we end with a direct call to action. Justice for Paityn, Evelyn, and Olivia depends on us. If you see Travis Decker, do not approach him. He is considered armed and dangerous. Call 911 immediately. If you have any information, no matter how small it seems, call the Chelan County Sheriff's Office tip line at 509-667-6845. We must also learn from this tragedy. Speak up if you see red flags in a family situation. Demand that our legal systems prioritize child safety above all else. Stay vigilant. Keep sharing his photo. Travis Decker cannot be allowed to disappear. For the sake of three little angels, we must bring this monster to justice. Don't let him get away with it.